Mark, when it comes to briefing a recruitment consultancy or your HR team on what you're looking for when they're trying to find the relevant candidates, what are the important things to consider?
Well, I mean, first thing, I think it's very, very important when you brief an agency looking for it, that the hiring manager, the person that's just going to be reporting to, whether it's a CEO or a board or whatever, and the HR person that's connected for this recruiting are there together, so that there's an alignment there about what they want. But the expectations have to be clear, and it's good to ask them about what are you looking for, leader, manager, manager, leader, in terms of that. What is really the mindset that will work well? And that's what the approach in terms of how they look at the role, how they look at their industry, et cetera. And so it's consistent. And of course, what are the aspects of the culture that are key to take into consideration? In other words, is it a more command and control culture, or is it a more freedom culture? How is your culture aspect there, so that they can, the recruitment agency can screen for people that way and save a lot of time. But I think really, really ask as much questions about the expectations. And I think that's really powerful.
Excellent. Fantastic. And when it comes to the recruitment process of when you're hiring a manager or a leader, did you have a number of stages and follow through with every single person in the same way, or did it differ from candidate to candidate because of the level of their experience and their knowledge?
Well, I think, what I found is that you have a number of screenings before you get to a few people. But then when you have that few people, you have to have a diversity of different people that are interviewing. And they're all focused maybe on looking for different aspects. And then fairly quickly, you're getting together and getting everybody's recollection, right? Because you leave it go a few days and suddenly some nuances are lost about what you really heard in that interview process. So I think, and that's one key thing, which I think I mentioned earlier about, having different scenarios and having different people ask those scenarios and so forth, and come together and say, is this person really being consistent in their answers about how they would act in those situations? And so, there's a big key for understanding consistency, because someone who's not consistent in the hiring process won't be consistent in the job.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting, actually, we have a number of clients that insist on task-related stages, and particularly sometimes for leaders or for managers. If you had to set a task for a leader or manager to assess them, what would it be? Or did you have a favorite one when you were hiring?
The most important for me is how their communication skills are, right? And are they able to get the message across in a concise way?
Mm-hmm.
One of the most critical skills I found for very good leaders, especially when you're building a leadership team around you, is for people have the ability to be concise. Because whenever you have someone in your team who's not concise, the minute they start talking, everybody's ears shut off, because they know it's going to be a long one, and they use that time to relax. So one of the most critical things is can they communicate very powerfully using stories and examples and engage people quickly? And do they have the ability to package their message or package their responses in a very concise way? Because when you're concise, you allow other people to talk, and your influence comes with them selling themselves on what you want them to buy into.
Excellent. Fantastic. Thanks, Mark. So, Mark, you have hired many managers and leaders in the past. Did you have a process for determining the type of manager you were seeking?
You have a process whenever you're hiring anybody, but the key thing that I found, that a couple of things had to be right to get a good hire. The first is a really, really clear expectation of the role in terms of what you want from that person, the kind of mindset you really want from them, the culture fit, the fit for the culture. But then also, I think, is who is going to be interviewing or talking with this person, because you have to have a strong diversity around both anybody above or peers or people below and so forth, because the more variety and diversity you have in terms of the interviewing process, the more you get a fuller picture of that person and how they will interact once they're in the team. And I think that's really, really important. But where things have really failed is you weren't really clear on the expectations up front in terms of what you really want. And I'll give you an example. Do you want more a leader or a manager? Because both people have both skills, and some superstars have both. But the tendency as a role, you need someone who's very good at direction, vision, getting everybody on board, or do you need someone who's very good at holding people accountable to a vision that's already established? So you have to be really, really clear on the expectations up front, and particularly the type of mindset you want in that person, and also the cultural fit.
Excellent, thank you. And so what would you say, what are the best tips for assessing managers in the interview process?
I think one of the best tips that I've encountered, and some other companies do the same, is having a set of scenarios that kind of match the challenges that your company faces, and asking them what would they do in that situation. And then divide up some of those scenarios across different interviewers. And when you really get them talking in those aspects, follow up with a question and say, what assumptions are you making along that way? And then the real powerful one I found is, once they say that, have you had any other experiences that kind of match that particular situation? What did you do then? And what didn't you do that you wish you would have done? I think that's a really powerful one. Yeah.
Excellent. Fantastic. And when it comes to hiring managers, certainly from the managers that you've hired or the leaders that you've hired in the past, what were some of the biggest mistakes that you made, and what did you learn from it?
I mean, the single biggest mistake is that you tend to prioritize, or you look at that person because of the experience they had versus the cultural fit, the fit for the company. And you see it so often where, you get someone, they had experience, they dealt with all these challenges we have, and then they have the bad cultural fit. I'll give you just one particular example. I had a chairman of a company come to me in the break during a morning session and say, I got to talk to you. He hired a CEO or managing director, and the managing director came down very hard on a key mistake and really destroyed the person. And now suddenly half the company doesn't want to come to the Christmas party.
Wow.
Okay. So, make sure that you don't prioritize their past experiences and performance over the cultural fit. They both are equally important, but if you don't have the right cultural fit, you could destroy your culture within weeks.
Yeah, really, really interesting point. And so to you, what determines a successful leader or manager?
It comes back to what I said earlier in terms of, what are you actually looking for? Are you looking for a leader manager or a manager leader? And what are the priorities that are needed for that? Because if you hire someone in, and really what you wanted them to be is to hold people accountable, but yet their skill set and their strength and their passion is about creating a direction, and they want someone else to do that aspect, then you've hired the wrong person. And it's like anything, what I found is leadership is kind of like a team sport. In other words, the best organizations I know is they have a great Mr. Outside and Mr. Inside, and they work together very well. And so if the company is really looking for a Mr. Inside and you hired a Mr. Outside, it's not going to be a good fit.
Excellent. And finally, when it comes to managing a leader, what's your top tip?
If you're going to really manage a leader, you really need to understand what is their number one love of that part of that business, right? Because a leader is going to want to know everything about the area of the business they love. Give them everything they love about that, and they leave you alone on the rest.
Excellent.
Don't give them everything that they love and they ask about everything, and then suddenly you don't have the freedom. And so you earn the freedom by giving them everything they want on what they love, and then they leave you alone.
Excellent. Fantastic. Wonderful. Cheers, Mark. I really appreciate your insights there. That's fantastic.
That was a pleasure talking to you.